To do my presentation on Romeo and Juliet and American pop culture. What it boils down to is that Romeo and Juliet is all about forbidden love. And because forbidden love is so relatable, America has created countless texts that reflect this theme and can ultimately be seen as adaptations just because of the fact that it's about forbidden love. And although the Romeo and Juliet adaptation that most people think of is Leonardo DiCaprio in his starring role as Romeo, there are other subtle adaptations that don't always get the attention they deserve. My analyzed text apply to or appeal to a multitude of different people. The topic is so relatable that it becomes versatile. It appeals to angsty teens and aged romantics. Ultimately, forbidden love is generational and adaptable. The first text I looked at was American Horror Story. And this story is basically about just a bunch of misery. Each storyline and character development bases around tragic circumstances. One of the specific ones is a love story between one living person and one dead person that appears to be a tragic love story. Tate and Violet, the two young people who are in love, become close because of their mutual disgust with high school life. Violet's dad does not approve of Tate, which gives it the air of forbidden love. When Violet's parents threaten to move her away from her current school, their relationship becomes threatened because Tate, being a ghost, cannot leave the house that he is haunting. So, when this happens, Tate suggests that Violet take her life so that they can be together forever.
If we take these, we can be together forever.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. It's the only way to do that.
Romeo and Juliet.
So, Tate uses Romeo and Juliet to show Violet how intensely he feels about their love. And it also shows Tate's attempt to convince Violet that their love is just as tragic as that of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet becomes a checkpoint from which the audience can view their escalated situation. Being together seems wrong because they are kept apart, which makes Tate believe that him and Violet are star-crossed lovers. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that they are meant to be together. It just means that they aren't allowed to see each other. The next text I chose to analyze was Twilight. And a quick overview, they're from two different worlds. One's a vampire and one is a human. And being together is wrong because their lives are so drastically different from one another. The one cannot live without the other. So in the second installment of the saga, Edward leaves Bella and she still cannot live without him. The prologue to that is, these violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die like fire and powder, which as they kiss, consume. As a prologue to the second installment, this suggests the level of intensity of Bella and Edward's love. The use of fire and powder shows two materials that are matched for each other. However, when they come together, their inherent nature becomes violent and deadly, and as they kiss, consume. So when they're in the height of their infatuation, Edward and Bella are still destructive when they are together. Romeo and Juliet is used to explain a situation in which two people's love seems so destined to fail that they are destructive whenever they are together, no matter how perfect it may seem. So their love is ultimately deadly when they're together. Stephanie Meyer had a quote to say about her choice in choosing this passage from Romeo and Juliet. I had to choose the romance or the warning. I went with the warning. She was originally going to choose a quote from Juliet's soliloquy about Romeo and how tenderly she loves him, but she chose the warning instead to reflect the danger that comes with Romeo and Juliet's love and that parallels Edward and Bella's love. And then this quote from Mary Clark, by placing her tale in dialogue with some of the canonical texts of Western literature, Mayer has given it the depth that allows her to move beyond simply telling a story of star-crossed lovers to speak to the larger issues that literature addresses: the nature of love, the reality of justice, and what it means to be human. So Clark argues that Mayer not only tells a story about forbidden love, but what it means to be human, because it seems like forbidden love for Edward and Bella because one of them is not human. However, the story overall suggests that humanity is more than just what it appears to be. And this appeals to a new generation because, and a quote from Jonathan Bate, because Shakespeare was supremely attuned to his own historical moment, but never wholly constrained with it, his works lived on after his death through something similar to the Darwinian principle of adaptation. So because vampires were so popular, Romeo and Juliet became present again in the popular trend that formed in vampires. A quote from Genevieve Koski says, "It isn't really suited to modern audiences, which may be why the most notable big screen attempts have seemingly made an effort to appeal to younger audiences who might initially balk at something as old and musty as centuries-old play by that Shakespeare guy that their teachers are always talking about." So Koski suggests that it is always geared toward a younger audience because they don't have the freedom that adults do. They have more constraints put on them by their parents. So it appeals to the younger audience because of their lack of ability to go out and do what exactly they want. So everything seems more intense. The last text I chose to analyze was Taylor Swift's song Love Story. There are more blatant references in this song about Romeo and Juliet. It's based on a situation in which her parents did not approve of the boy she was dating at the time. She wrote the song because it was the first time she really felt, she says, what it feels like to be in a situation like Romeo and Juliet, where you're not allowed to see someone that you really like. And her lyrics are more blatant about and overt about her Romeo and Juliet references. So we were both young. References the fact that Romeo and Juliet were both very young when they met. On a balcony in summer air is again an overt reference to the famous balcony scene. So she tried to put that in there to exemplify the famous scene in Romeo and Juliet. And then my daddy said, "Stay away from Juliet." That gives it the air of the forbiddenness. And so the people listening to the song are able to relate to that because she wants to do something that her dad does not approve of. And the last quote, "Romeo, take me somewhere we can be alone," suggests the parallel to Romeo and Juliet planning to run away together after they have faked their own deaths. So the title in and of itself explains a lot about its reference to Romeo and Juliet. It is called Love Story, and it suggests the universality of Romeo and Juliet's love because it's about Romeo and Juliet. So everyone thinks of Romeo and Juliet as the typical, stereotypical love story. It appeals to a younger crowd, and teens can relate to it because it's catchy, and it expresses how unfair parents seem when they are trying to control their children and how dramatic adolescence is. The song remains relevant today because Taylor Swift uses a tragic situation to explain how, how she felt during that moment when her parents did not allow her to see this boy. It expresses the intensity of her feelings for this boy. And using Romeo and Juliet also helps appeal to a wider audience because more than just kids can relate to this song because it is such a worldwidely known story. And this is a quote from No Sweat Shakespeare. "It's not possible to say definitively what Shakespeare's themes are because each generation finds something that speaks to their generation." So in Taylor Swift's case, she picked out the forbidden love, I want what I cannot have aspect of Romeo and Juliet. In American Horror Story, Tate seemingly picked out the fact that Violet's parents could not allow him to see her. And in Twilight, they become separated, but they're still pining for each other. And this is another quote from Genevieve Koski. "However, it might be the most adaptable Shakespeare play by virtue of the nature of its central infatuation and super high highs and tear-jerking lows, well suited to a medium that can accompany them with swelling music, intimate camera angles, lush sweeping sets, and the like." So she argues that it's the most adaptable one of Shakespeare's plays because it is so filled with heightened emotion and that everyone is able to relate to some sort of intense emotion and aspect of humanity, and that it's able to kind of go across multiple generations. And here's another quote from No Sweat Shakespeare. "Shakespeare endures because with each new turn of the history, a new dimension of his work opens up before us. So with new trends bring new adaptations. such as the science fiction trend with American Horror Story. So they tried to stick it in there while maintaining the tragic element of the forbidden love. In Twilight, when vampires were very popular, they put in the tragic love element into the story because they didn't seem like they were destined to be together. And with Taylor Swift's song, she is very popular in American culture. So by referencing Romeo and Juliet, she's keeping it relevant to the time. To wrap things up, the analyzed texts that I looked at are only a small portion of the remarkably large number of adaptations from Romeo and Juliet. There are more subtle adaptations, but they take a close eye to see. It's not always going to be so overt and directly quoted. Forbidden love will always be relevant as long as younger generations remain. Because being told that you aren't allowed to see someone turns an ordinary love into a tragic one. Romeo and Juliet being the most popular forbidden love story allows audiences to use it as a point of context from which to look at another text. And then to completely wrap things up, these are just a multitude of more of the adaptations that I found. So Warm Bodies, the ballet, Romeo and Juliet, the Titanic, West Side Story, Romanoff and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, and Dirty Dancing.